Now then, to work. I hope you're not going to disappoint me.
I sincerely hope not.
What we want is something revolutionary.
Dear me. Well, tell me, have you thought about...
Pull to open. Pull to open. Yes, and what do you do?
Don't worry, you'll find them quite comfortable.
And perhaps the time has come for you to start revising your opinions.
Excellent.
Where are they taking us?
Now, pay attention, please.
Here come the drums!
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, every single story in the television canon, in completely random order. My name's Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal. And as you may know, Chris and I are a couple of guys, a couple of journalists who have written and commented about Doctor Who for, shall we say, several years. But this particular podcast journey, this show, Pull to Open, is about to hit a milestone. We have visited no less than 98 different Doctor Who stories since we began this journey. And we are about to do today number 99.
Wow. Yeah.
But before we get to that, Chris, can you give us a quick rundown on how we got here?
Yes, well, 10 years ago, a guy named Paris stole a woman named Helen, and we laid siege to a city. No, wait, sorry, wrong.
Hold on.
Wrong rundown. Hold on. No, previously on Pull to Open, long ago in the mists of time, first there was the Codex, and the Codex contained the list of all Doctor Who stories, and lo, the Codex had made some curious decisions, and the Codex was occasionally wrong, and missed a Doctor Who story. And that the capricious god of the Randomizer came along, and it pointed out all our flaws in the Codex, and it said, "Hey, why have you taken Pyramid at the End of the World and Lie of the Land and separated them from their predecessor? And why have you? I see you've missed out Destiny of the Daleks. Let's take you to Destiny of the Daleks." It's done something similar this week.
A lot of Pull to Open in jokes there.
That's right. That one's for the long-time listeners.
If you know, you know.
We have done a lot of Hartnell, a lot of William Hartnell. We may be crossing the line where Hartnell is the Randomizer's favorite Doctor. It used to be Capaldi,
right?
And now it appears to be Hartnell. So what's going on with that? We've done a lot of straight historicals. We did the Time Meddler.
That was very recent.
Very recently, we did the Time Meddler. Even more recently, we did the Aztecs. The Randomizer threw those up as oppositional to one another, which they kind of are. We've also done lots of Season 3 of Hartnell, which is a mostly missing season. We did the Celestial Toymaker at the start of this year, which may become relevant in these 60th anniversary days.
Well, it's no longer May. It will become relevant.
It will.
It's been confirmed.
Definitely confirmed to become relevant. And we've also done The Gunfighters by one Donald Cotton.
About to become relevant.
Yes, about to become relevant. 3 stories ago, we rocketed forward from Hartnell. I believe we were just at the Aztecs before we went there. We rocketed forward and had a delivery from Kablam! 2 stories ago, we had a special delivery of wonderful nonsense from a cactus named Meglos. And last time we rocketed back again, one Doctor to Pertwee, and Season 7, the famous Season 7. We nearly have a bingo because we have now done the Ambassadors of Death. And, you know, Pete, it's fair to say the Randomizer has not been easy on us lately, right? I mean, a 7-part story that's trying to be as adults and do as many different things as the Ambassadors of Death. Where's it going to take us next? Is it going to give us a nice rest? No.
A nice tic-tac of a new Who episode that only
I
only
know,
takes
right?
us 40 minutes to get through or something.
You'd,
Could it
you'd
be?
you'd think, but no. It's being very difficult. It's taking us back to Hartnell, season 3, to an entirely missing story, to a historical that required that I spend about the last 7 days in the history corner, from where I'm going to update you, ladies and gentlemen. It is time. It is time to go back to ancient Troy for the Mythmakers.
That's right. Our 99th story is the Mythmakers.
Yes. And what an auspicious story to do for our 99th. And Pete, just to close the loop on the codex, do you realize what it's done? It has
I don't. Tell me.
it has flown us, because what happened in 1965, they screened an episode called Mission to the Unknown, and
Right.
then there was the 4 parts of the Mythmakers, and then there was the 12 parts of the Daleks Master Plan. And what we have done, what the randomizer has done, is flown our TARDIS directly between the two, between Mission to the Unknown and the Daleks Master Plan, thus making a mockery of the fact that we have combined
Right.
Mission to the Unknown and the Daleks Master Plan.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's no in between in the codex.
Yes.
It's just kind of right before. But yes, it Mission to the Unknown was broadcast right before this. And it's funny because this serial opens up with the sprained ankle or whatever, like, or hurt,
Yes.
like Vicky's hurt, which comes from Galaxy 4.
Yes.
So they were relying on people to remember like 2 weeks before, which
Yes.
I guess was, what you did, because that's how TV was back in, well, forever, until like the age of on demand and streaming. But
they also had a lot of complaints. We'll get into it. They had a lot of complaints about what the hell happened last week. Like the Doctor wasn't in it, and
right.
we heard about this plan of the Daleks taking over the universe, and now we're in ancient Troy. What's going on? So
yeah, season 3 needed some instructions, and I got to say, I don't want to get too far into this, but it definitely needed some instructions on our end too, because we didn't really coordinate as much last week about how we were going to watch this.
Yes.
So before we get to the commentary, I wanted to ask you, what did you end up doing to watch the missing episode of the Mythmakers?
I didn't.
Wow, what did you do?
No, I listened to the excellent version with Peter Purves, who plays Stephen, doing the linking narration. I bought that on Audible, listened to it, thoroughly enjoyed it, and enjoyed it so much that first of all, I went to the Target novelization.
Yeah, okay.
Famously one of the better ones, written by Donald Cotton, who, by the way, we have a Donald Cotton bingo, because he also did the Gunfighters, and this is it. These are his 2 contributions. So we got the bingo. We've also got a bingo, by the way, on the use of the word orgy in Doctor Who.
Oh wow! Wait, hold on. We'll get to that. Yes, I think
that.
Lots of eyebrows are raised on 2 coasts between you and me when that line came out. Well, that's great. I'm glad you got that audio version. I got to check that out. So I had a really good experience with the loose cannon videos on Dailymotion the last time we had a whole missing episode, which I believe was Marco Polo. I just thought it was a really great experience, really good edit. So they do a good job of getting telesnaps and doing different angles, doing zooms, and sort of cueing it with the dialogue, as well as using whatever existing footage exists. And so for the Mythmakers, there's very few. It's probably, I don't know, half dozen, maybe a few more of actual clips, but they're very short. But they mixed all of them in on those key scenes. And again, I think I had a pretty good experience of getting the story that way. So that's what I went with.
I did want to watch it because I was really interested to see what they did with it. But what happened is I went down a rabbit hole. I went down a Homeric rabbit hole. I went on an odyssey. I feel like I've been away for 10 years. And I know way more about the Iliad and about Homer and about the whole legends of the Greek myths and the history of it. Did you know, by the way, the Randomizer is sponsored by a publishing company? Because This week, this very week that we're recording this, possibly the buzziest new translation of the Iliad just came out.
Get out.
A scholar named Emily Wilson. She was the first female translator of the Odyssey. She did that a few years ago. That became a bestseller. It was a big hit. And then she turned her attention to the Iliad. That literally just came out as we were watching the Mythmakers this week, my friend. The Randomizer has gotten its own sponsorship, and we're not getting in on the deal.
We need a sales team. We got to cut him up. We got an affiliate link in the notes, but we're not doing that today. But anyway, before we get too far into chatting about the Mythmakers, I wanted to tell everyone, hey, if you're here just for that commentary, you can, of course, check your show notes. You might not find a link to a novel, but you will find a time code for the exact time we begin our commentary, which, of course, will begin with TLDW, where one of us, I have no idea who this week, will be summarizing the entire plot of this Doctor Who story. And then we're going to have lots and lots to say about it. So just check the show notes. If you're on YouTube, scroll down. It's on the video notes. And you'll find that code pretty prominent. And you can fast forward. But you're not going to want to do that. I guarantee it. Because we have lots to talk about here right away. We have an all-new Whomoji challenge. We have some results from you guys, the listeners, on what y'all thought of Meglos in Poll to Open. And we have a YouTube comment of the week.
You should say that as well. If you were listening last week, we have to.
Oh, yeah, we have an update. Yep. We have a sequel to the Whomoji challenge from last week, which left everyone stumped, except for maybe a few of our fans on YouTube who are astute. So it's all coming up right here in the Poll to Open Pulse Loop.
Of course, Fetcher Damon.
Yes, here we are in the Pulse Loop, formerly the Feedback Loop, but now we're pulsing, and let me send out this first pulse. And tell you, listeners, that one of the best ways, the best way to show support for Pull to Open is to make a sacrifice to your household god on the altar in which you've placed all of your Pull to Open artifacts. But the second best way to show support is to leave a review in the podcast app that you're using, especially if it's Apple Podcasts. The 5-star reviews really help surface this podcast to other fans of Doctor Who. And speaking of other fans of the Doctor Who, the third best way to support this podcast, after you've done your sacrifice, after you've given us, let's say a favorable 5-star rating that Zeus would approve of in Apple Podcasts, the third best way is to share the podcast with a friend and invite them to the human sacrifice. Don't let them know that they're on the menu. But yeah, share it with a friend, share it with a random friend, go randomly into your address book and send a random episode of Pull to Open. You know that we use random.org, so use that at the end of the show. Once you've done this, once you've voted, if you're on Spotify, send it along, share it with others.
That's right. All you fans out there, we know you're fans, especially you true fans who are all over last week's Whomoji challenge, because that's what it's time for, y'all. A little update there and a new one. So let's officially begin the Whomoji challenge. Okay. All right. So follow up. Last week, we did not have the answer key for the Whomoji challenge. So we both ended up being contestants for a very long Whomoji challenge, which ended up being 20 emojis, come to think of it. It was, so there was a planet, the world, and then an X.
The Earth, specifically the Earth. Not just
the Earth.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And we had 9 of those in a row, each with a red X, and then the 10th one, another Earth, had a check mark. And if I just said the word 10th, I think.
The 10th planet.
That might have been what gave it away. Right?
Okay. All right. So the confusion was that they were all Earth, and we were thinking New Earth. I was thinking World Enough and Time at one point. Stolen Earth, I think, was my first guess.
Mm-hmm.
We were zeroing in.
And I was thinking End of the World, and it basically for some reason I had some strange mental block. The only words I filtered out of the scene, the world again and again, were world and Earth. I did not think planet.
Yep.
If we had thought planet, I think a quick search of the codex would boom.
Yes, it's so obvious when you look back on it. Oh well.
Yeah.
Well,
but we did it live.
you.
That's that's pull to open. We keep it real here.
Live. Was that who was that Whomoji challenge from?
That particular emoji challenge that was from none other than the Human Palindrome, Mr. Mark Cockrum.
Mark Cockrum, my goodness,
generously left it for us with his 5-star review. Thank you, Mark.
Wow, I feel like he left it like a Trojan horse.
It's the thing that undoes the podcast. No, it could never happen. And
a whole bunch of Greeks came out of that emoji challenge, or a whole bunch of planets, and swarmed over. Pull to open.
Yeah,
so
there you go. So that's all leading up, of course, to this week's Whomoji challenge.
Oh my god, I have to do this again.
And it's from someone, one of our fans named Pat Peachel. Interesting name. Weird.
Yeah.
I wonder who that guy is.
Have you checked in with Pat Peachel on what the answer to this?
I have.
Oh, good.
Pat Peachel has given us the answer on this one. So, yes, we keep it very real here on Pull to Open.
Real. Everyone gets Homeric names. Yes.
All right, sir. It's time for the main event. Are you ready for this one?
I never, but bring it.
Okay, here we go. 4 emojis.
Okay.
The sun.
Mm-hmm.
Full on sun, like the sun. It's glowing there in the sky. The sun.
Yeah, that one.
All right.
Not the one with the face on. Just the sun.
Not the one with the face.
Okay.
Octopus.
Okay.
Trash bin.
Okay, so gotta be
plunger.
Yep.
There it is.
Day of the Daleks.
It's Day of the Daleks.
Hey,
there you go.
I was going for Sunmakers there for a second. Sunmakers being very much on my mind because that is the other makers. After the myth makers in the Doctor Who canon.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one. How would you do makers as an emoji? Like hands doing something.
Yeah, hammers, hands.
I'm gonna let the fans figure that out, guys. We're just putting the challenge for that specifically. Yeah. Sun makers, myth makers. Give us some good stuff. And remember, it doesn't always just have to represent the title. Sometimes it can represent what's going on in the story, like a recent emoji we were our greatest show in the galaxy. Check it out in the Codex. Link in the show notes.
Yes.
But thanks to Pat Peachel for sending us that one. That was really great. And we would love it if we could get some more folks to contribute, whether you're badly anagrammed or not. Go ahead and send us in some more emoji challenges wherever you can find us. You can go for it at any of our socials, or we're Pull to Open 63 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, or Pull to Open on TikTok and Blue Sky, or just email us, pulltoopenpodcast@gmail.com. Do the whole thing.
That's right. Yeah, combine your review with the Whomoji challenge, and it's hella efficient that way. Well, anyway. Thanks, Pat. I'm looking forward to the next one. And don't worry,
me too.
If you make it the Sunmakers, don't worry about me remembering, because I'm not going to remember this time next week.
You've already dragged and dropped most of your memory for this week's commentary, I realize. Right. I'm excited to get to it. But before we do that, folks, we have so much fun bringing this podcast to you. And one of the reasons we're able to make time for all that fun is because of the service we use to record it. And that is Zencastr. I mean, you should have heard us when we were starting out. In fact, you can, because those podcasts are still up. But amateurs might be generous. We were trying to record video calls off Skype or FaceTime. We were using a whole bunch of different software. Plus, we could just really never get the audio to sync properly. We did our best, but you can kind of tell on a couple of the early ones. But really, ever since we switched to Zencastr, it's been a dream. It's like it's really like having a remote control for your TARDIS. It's that convenient. All you do, you create your recording room in the cloud, send the link to your guests, and Zencastr handles the rest. It records studio quality sound and video up to 4K. Plus, it has all the tools you need to host, create, and distribute your podcast. It's all in one place. So whether you have your own podcast, and I know some of you do, or you're thinking about starting one, we would strongly encourage you to check out Zencastr. Set your browser coordinates for zencastr.com/pricing and use our code IPUSH. That's IPUSH. and you'll get 30% off your first month on any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experience that we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It is time to share your story. And remember, the site is zencastr.com/pricing, and the code is iPush.
Wow, Pete, did we do our first ad? Is that wow?
Might have been.
I feel so humbled by this moment. No, but it's seriously true.
The real deal.
Zencaster is. I mean, we wouldn't advertising something we don't believe in. Oh my
100%.
goodness, Zencaster has been amazing for us, and I always get a little thrill every time Pete sends the Zencaster link. So seriously, if you're thinking about starting the podcast, and who in the Doctor Who world has not started a podcast yet? That's the question. Who are you? We know you're out there.
Maybe Millie Gibson. She's the only one.
Yeah, come on, Millie. Well, Millie, I'm sure will want to join us as soon as she starts listening.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Her agent said they get back to me. So
yeah, exactly. It's
good as done.
I'm sure we'll be holding her at bay before long. But there are other ways to interact with the show, not just by using that code. And seriously, check it out. Zencasters.com/pricing. Code is iPush. But if you're on Spotify, you can also rate the show on your app, and you pull from the bottom of the screen for the poll to open, and you have all of the show's ratings there. We're not going to list them, we'll get to them at the end. Basically, if you thought it was a Dalek good episode, Ogron bad episode, Fight Camp banger, whatever it is, stay tuned for the explanation of the ratings. But Spotify has been having some technical difficulties. If you can't vote for some reason, keep trying. Stay in line. If you are in line to vote, stay in line. And you can go back, for example, and vote on Meglos, as many people did. And if you disagree with these ratings, you should head over there right now, because a full 50% of listeners so far have rated Meglos with its silent exclamation mark, a Dalek. You rated it a good episode, a good story of Doctor Who.
Yeah, they're siding with Mark, who guested with us on that podcast, and he liked it. He was all about this is Dalek, and there's a lot to like in Meglos. There's some fun stuff going on. I get it. I'm surprised the Lady Cassandra, which is paper thin but looks good, Doctor Who story, did not get really much in the way of any votes, because that was my rating. That felt like Meglos, with the very famous iconic shot of Tom Baker covered in cactus acne, was this gives it a lot of points for Cassandra already.
You would think so, but we did, as our YouTube video did call it the most batshit crazy Doctor Who story ever. I think that a lot of people are just having a fine old time with it, and same experience as Mark, just wanted to rate it a Dalek because they just had fun. So I get it. Thank you, those of you who gave it a fixed point in time, as I did, about the same number who gave it an Ogron. But Dalek is currently winning. If you think that's wrong for Meglos, head over and rate it differently. In fact, after this podcast, go off to all of our other stories and just fire them up and just vote on everything. Vote early.
We got to put the podcast on Tygellen Twitter. Make sure they vote. I'm sure the rating's going to change.
That's right. Thanks be to Ty, and thanks be to you if you voted, and thanks be to you also if you went to YouTube.
Yeah, so that's a great place to leave an emoji title or a comment. And you get to see us, which is always fun. Of course, it's fun. You got the Easter eggs. Got my Hartnell poster up here. It's all good stuff. So go ahead on over to YouTube and subscribe, like the video, all the good stuff you're supposed to do. There's probably a bell icon for notifications when we post something new. And quick note about YouTube. Now, ever since the reveal with the trailer, most recently for the 60th anniversary, that the Toymaker is the character being played by Neil Patrick Harris, our plot summary of the Celestial Toymaker has really taken off. It's apparently winning the YouTube search contest. And that's super fun to see. I mean, it's getting some more comments. And, I hope people going into it understand what TLDW is, and it's more of a seat-of-the-pants plot summary than a really sort of well-thought-out and edited version. But I think we captured it pretty well. particularly since the only footage that really exists is the stuff from episode 4.
Yes, I would say definitely for the original Toymaker story, definitely keep your expectations low. I see a lot of people commenting on this video of the entire plot of the Celestial Toymaker, saying that they were really excited about the story. They were sort of jazzed out. They'd seen pictures, and it's not necessarily as as glorious as you are thinking in your head. But go there, check it out.
We had different ratings, so if you go and check out the plot summary, I would also check out our commentary on it. We did the Celestial Toymaker earlier this year, easy to find on our channel, and yeah, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but let's just say Chris and I walked away with different feelings from the story.
Goodness, I can't even remember what our ratings were at this stage, but you can go. The link to Apple Podcasts is right there on YouTube. We make it easy for you. So go there and comment, and you may end up as one of our YouTube comments of the week, which we have right. not on the Toymaker, but on Meglos.
Yeah, so back to Meglos for a second. So JC17 Ace, friend of the pod, comments on a lot of videos, had a quick thing to say about one of the plot devices in Meglos, which was, of course, the sort of time loop thing the Doctor and Romana were in called a chronic hysteresis. And Ace says, in defense of the chronic hysteresis, the term hysteresis can be thought of as lag and is often used in conjunction with magnets and things. But combined, we get a kind of time loop of continuous lagging. So if you think of it as a time loop with a delay, it makes the eventual escape by overload a little better. I guess that kind of works. I like it. I like that it's built into the name that the quote-unquote lag, which it's clear that the reason they can kind of get out of the time loop, it's not a perfect time loop. They have that extra time at the end of every loop. And leveraging that in some way was the answer to getting it through still.
Which I like that it was sort of set up, and it does make it make sense, which is great because so much in Meglos doesn't. And it's sort of classic Chris Bidmead, since Bidmead did come up with this term, chronic hysteresis. If you actually drill down, he's not wrong. It's a good clue as to what kind of time loop it is. But the fact that he would use that, even though chronic hysteresis would sound to most of us like a made-up ailment for women in the 18th century, it just Bidmead didn't hear that, right? He wanted to go for this. He couldn't hear himself. So yeah, so I appreciate the defense of it. I get it. Still think that time loop with a bit of lag would have been, is it just as fast to say?
JC17 Aces should have been a script editor here instead of he could have helped out Chris and just been boom, all right, just throw in a little explanation of this and then you're golden. So
and Romana, we know Romana's smarter than the Doctor. She could have been one to say it's a chronic hysteresis. The Doctor could have been a what, or something like oh well, of course I know that. What does that mean? What does it mean? Anyway,
it made a little more sense than you might remember. So good.
Yes. Well, I'm keen to get on with the Mythmakers, so let's just blast through the rest of our socials. We're on TikTok at Just Pull to Open. We've got more than 11,000 followers there. We've had some popular videos recently. I think the Kabam videos were kind of a hit there. But give us a follow, keep on commenting, and also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, kind of sort of Threads at Pull to Open 63. Drop us a line. Blue Sky at Pull to Open. And that is all Homer wrote for the Pulse Loop. The Pulse Loop is unpulsed, and it is now time for TLDW. Too long. Didn't watch Too Long, Doctor Who.
Are we there already?
Yes, that's right. And we're going to do a very special TLDW in which our contestant this week, Pete Paschal, has agreed to summarize the entire Iliad. And what we do is we give you 1 minute per year of the siege. So you have 10 minutes. 1 year per minute. You have 10,000 years to summarize. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to do our traditional Pull to Open TLDW and risk angering the gods by summarizing the Mythmakers in what turns out to be 2 minutes because we allocate 30 seconds per classic episode. Mythmakers is just 4 episodes. And Pete, it's your turn this week. How do you feel?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
mean,
astute watchers on YouTube can see I'm kind of muting my mic, and I got a little throat thing today, so maybe I'll plea that as the reason I didn't do super well. But maybe I'll do great. Who knows? I think this story I think there's definitely rabbit holes I could go down, but I forgot them anyway.
Well, let's find out what your Achilles heel is in this description.
Oh,
oh my goodness! Yes, that there are more Greek myth references coming through the rest of the show, folks. Keep it here, but keep it here right now because we are about to give you the official pull to open summary of the Mythmakers in 2 minutes, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, it's the Trojan War, and Achilles is fighting Hector on the desert, but the TARDIS materializes and distracts them, and therefore Achilles can slay Hector, and then the Doctor sort of comes out. Vicki and Stephen are with him, but they stay in the TARDIS. They mistake the Doctor for Zeus. Because he's obviously magical, and so they take him back to the camp with the Greeks. And they say he's Zeus, but Odysseus and Agamemnon are skeptical. Stephen comes out to help him, but then Stephen is captured. He says he's a traveler. He pretends not to know the Doctor, but then they realize that they are together. The Doctor sort of unmasks himself and says, like, okay, I'm really a time traveler, and Stephen's my friend, and well, we're going to capture you, and you're going to help us invade Troy. And then, meanwhile, Vicki is still in the TARDIS, but the TARDIS has been taken by the Trojans into Troy, and Cassandra there basically says, like, oh, she's a prophet. She thinks it's going to get something that has brought into the city, a seeming gift, is going to destroy them. They think it's the TARDIS. Vicki comes out, says she's a time traveler. She quickly kind of wins them over, strangely, because of this guy Paris. And also this guy Troilus, who she kind of falls for. And then Stephen ditches the Doctor to go help Vicki because he knows the Greeks are going to invade. He gets captured after he fights Paris, or pretends to fight him. He gets in, and so he unfortunately betrays Vicki a little bit accidentally. They sort of start to suspect them because they know each other. That they force the Doctor, meanwhile, Odysseus, to basically design a way to destroy. To invade Troy. He, because he can't think of anything, decides on a horse and then gets them all in the horse. It's the Trojan horse. The Doctor came up with it. They come into the city. We all know what happens. They come out and open the gates. Meanwhile, the Doctor, and because she's fallen for Troilus, and goes to him out of the city after it's been invaded, and the Doctor leaves with Stephen and this new person, Katerina. And I totally screwed it up. I didn't. Yeah,
That's all right. No, but I will say I'm sure that a lot of people who know that the Mythmakers is where Vicki leaves and Katerina enters were waiting for Katerina in the summary. But no, folks, I got to tell you, the arrival of Katerina at the last minute. That's exactly
Katerina.
Yeah, exactly.
She just arrives in episode 4, and she's just kind of there, and okay, I guess.
And shall we start there? Because, let's not go straight into the world of Greek myths straight away, or the Iliad, or how this relates to the Iliad, all of that. History Corner is massive this week.
History
folks.
Corner can wait.
History Corner can wait. Let's talk Companion Corner first of all, because it is Vicki's last episode, and it is technically Katerina's first story, although she only shows up, she's a handmaiden to Cassandra, she only shows up right at the end of episode 4, and then she is killed, spoiler alert, sorry folks, she's killed in episode 4 or 5 of the Daleks' Master Plan, which is the next story.
No idea, because I've never seen it. I did know she dies, though. But
yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I feel like it's hard to even talk about this without taking a further step back and talking a little bit about the behind the scenes stuff of season 3 and Doctor Who.
Yes. Yeah.
This story is a little bit, it's arguable this is sort of where a lot of the chaos began. Because sort of famously, Verity Lambert had left the show, John
Yeah.
Wiles was the new producer, and at this point in the show, in crafting the Mythmakers, he has sort of really taken over and is really starting to make decisions, and some of them not particularly popular. And one of them is that, for whatever reason, he didn't particularly care for Maureen O'Brien, who plays Vicki, and decided to write her out of the episode and handled it like right out of the show, and then handled it really badly. Like basically, they wrote the Mythmakers, and she didn't know she was being written out until she read the script, according to her. Or I mean, I don't think anyone's contradicting her. So it's like, but yeah. And
Well,
like,
Peter Purves has said the same thing. Peter Purves, as Stephen, found out at the same time his contract had been renewed, hers hadn't. They either found out very precipitously when they came back from vacation, or when they read the script. And the script itself, I mean, without taking too much of a diversion into history, I'll just say, obviously, so Vicki is renamed Cressida. I don't think you got that in your summary.
Well, I thought about bringing it up and realized I was already short on time, so I didn't.
The King of Troy, King Priam, just sort of says out of nowhere, let's. I don't like the name Vicki. Let's call you Cressida. Now, in the novelization, there's a bit of extra detail. He's like, I had a cousin called Cressida once. Well, yes, Cressida was. So Troilus and Cressida is actually a very late addition to the whole legend of Troy. It's something that they like a 12th century writer came up with it, and then Chaucer did a version, and then Shakespeare did a version. That's probably where you've heard Troilus and Cressida as a Shakespeare play. Maybe you had to do it at school, probably not. It's a bit of a weird play, but the whole point of Troilus and Cressida is that Cressida abandons Troilus. It's a tragedy. He's killed, and she goes off. He's actually killed in the Iliad by Achilles, who's off on a killing spree, and he kills Troilus in the worst possible way, which is he defiles him in the temple of Apollo, I believe. Just
Hold on,
horrible.
That didn't happen in
exactly
the world.
Yes. So it's a change. So they had to change it. And the original idea of Donald Cotton, the writer of this, who was kind of a classics guy, like he knew his stuff. He'd done a lot of radio plays on the subjects of classical myths, and so he knew this. And the whole idea was that Vicki, as Cressida, was going to go off with this guy called Diomedes, as she does, which is the name given to Stephen. So both of the companions are given alternate names. So that's what she does in the tragedy. She goes off with this Greek called Diomedes, and Troilus is killed, and it's a tragedy. And so that's what Donald Cotton was going for. And then I guess at some point in the writing of this, like he had to work a lot with Donald Tosh. Who was, I believe he was the script editor at the start.
Script editor. So I seem to be saying that originally this story had a more tragic ending for Vicki?
Yes. That she would basically go off with Diomedes. That's sort of fulfilling the tragedy, the idea of the tragedy.
So then she'd be basically alone in ancient Greece. And,
yes.
Oh, wow.
Well, no, Troilus, but she would go off in the TARDIS with Diomedes. Troilus would then be killed. And that's the last thing that he realized. Yes.
Okay, now that makes it because Stephen's Diomedes. Yeah. Okay, I didn't quite put that together. I was thinking like she left, but then Troilus dies. But then, okay, got it.
So it's actually quite clever, a quite clever thing that Donald Cotton was attempting there, as he's doing a lot of subtle, clever things. We'll get to it, but he's basically subverting and undermining the whole story of Troy and the whole Iliad. We'll get to why he's doing that.
I got some of that.
But here, that's way more when you dig in. That's why I went down so many rabbit holes. But this was supposed to be. Vicki was supposed to be written out because it was a joke, because it was classical. Not written out, but she was supposed to go off with Stephen. And Troilus is like, oh damn it, because we have that sweet scene right where he's like, are you? Is he a special friend, this Diomedes? And she's like, no, not, don't tell tell your friend not to worry.
But the original version assumed they were leaving together. Like basically she was staying with them. And I assume the Katerina thing wasn't part of it. So then
correct,
because they wrote her out, they had to change the ending and put in Katerina.
Yes.
one of the reasons I would not to get too far into the commentary right away, but I think episode 4 doesn't bring home the farce, the humor and the cleverness in the way you really want it to. And that's probably one of the reasons.
It's quite deliberately subverting our expectations. We'll get to that. It suddenly turns into a tragedy in episode 4.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have...
It's not the only reason it doesn't. Yes. But it is. Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it was supposed to be more of a tragedy. And instead, that's sort of the only nice thing that happens to Vicki. But yeah, Vicki was supposed to be in the Katarina role. She was supposed to go forward into the Daleks' master plan. That was the idea. And it would have been much, much more affecting if Vicki had died in the Daleks' master plan instead of Katarina, who you only get 4 episodes to know. Toby Hadoke, whose name has come up once or twice in the show before, has this whole thing about Katarina of like, are we just like having a mass hallucination here? Like, she's not a companion. She's only in it for 4 episodes. She's barely in the Myth Makers. She gets killed almost immediately. She doesn't count. And that sort of set me thinking about our own. Go back and check our story on the companion list. I don't suppose you have it to hand, because I don't think Katarina makes it under our definition.
Well, I'm not as a companion, but she travels in the TARDIS. She travels in time.
Yeah,
she's
more than one story.
So she gets sort of the minimum.
But wasn't Adam also Adam in Dalek and the long game?
Yeah, because he was working against the Doctor.
I see. Okay,
that's why he doesn't count. But Katarina, she's, I guess, arguably working against the Doctor early. She doesn't have a lot of lines, but she's like working for Cassandra. So arguably, by the time she's taken on board the TARDIS, though, I think she's essentially come around.
Well, she's sort of taken on board the TARDIS by accident. She isn't invited in by the Doctor. Right. She just in the confusion.
Help with Steven.
Yeah.
Like Steven can't walk. Like he's been wounded, and then it is a little bit like, okay, like I guess you're here now, and it's not. Maybe there's not too much to unpack here, but you think about, well, yeah, why not save her from the downfall of Troy? But it gets to one of those things where it's like, well, why not save everyone from the downfall of Troy?
Yeah.
And it's sort of, there's a little bit of echo here, I think, in the Fires of Pompeii, or maybe that's just my read, but the idea, like, when Donna's pegging the 10th Doctor, just save someone, and he kind of just saved someone here, which is like, okay, I guess,
and
it's okay.
The person to be saved, I really wish if they were going to get rid of Vicki, I really wish that they'd saved Cassandra. Because Cassandra is the most, she's kind of the most tragic figure in the original story, right? So her curse is that she can see the future, but nobody believes her, nobody listens to her.
Right.
And here in the Mythmakers, we see why nobody, there's a good reason why nobody listens to it. And that's because when they bring the TARDIS into Troy, she's all like, this is going to be, I had a dream. I saw something was brought into the city and it was our doom. You're not listening to me. Yeah. And they're like, doom? Like, this is a blue box. It's a temple. Like, it's this tiny thing. The Doctor's told them it's a temple, so they save it. And of course, the TARDIS isn't the thing that she was dreaming of, the Trojan horse. So it's really tragic for her that she and what you find out in the 4th episode is exactly what happens in the Greek myths, which is that she becomes Agamemnon's one of Agamemnon's slaves. Basically, it's a terrible ending for her.
Those Greeks were pretty brutal. Everyone was back then. But I gotta say, Cassandra, I wouldn't say no woman in history, but like she is definitely one of those people who really should take a LinkedIn course on communication. Like, she is extremely unlikable. Like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So like you get this just very kind of, shrill, angry, must do this, listen to me, like jumping up and down, listen to me. It's like, okay, let me list the ways you could make your point without doing this. And I really strangely got to really like the character of Paris, just
Yes.
because he's kind of goofball. Like he's a little like, he's obviously full of pride and he's all like, all
Mhm.
right. And he's not even trying to play Greek or Trojan, he's just this guy from Great Britain 1960s sitcoms. It's just
Yes.
that's enough, sister. Sit down. I'm taking the temple and I'm great and no one should ever listen to you anyway.
Yeah, he's revealed in this to be a bit shallow, a bit of a coward, which is actually also how Paris is in the Iliad and the other Greek myths around the fall of Troy. So that's accurate. But I love that they have King Priam, the king of Troy, say about Cassandra something like, "Oh, don't pay attention to her. I think she just." She wants to. She's always prophesying doom, and I think it's because she wants to be able to say, "I told you so." Now we
She's Debbie
all
Downer.
know,
She's
yes,
totally Debbie Downer.
we all know someone like that in our lives who's just like, oh, you just want to. I mean, they used to say when I was at Time magazine, we had an economics correspondent who I remember, one editor sort of rolling his eyes and say, yeah, that guy, he's predicted 5 out of the last 3 recessions. He's, he's just always saying it's going to be a recession because sometime, he's going to be right. Yeah. So I love that explanation, which you don't get in the original for why Cassandra is being a Debbie Downer. But it would have been great for the Doctor to rescue her as a fellow seer. And then you could have had the first 4 episodes of the Dalek Master Plan being Cassandra prophesying her own doom, which Katerina sort of does.
Yeah.
But like not to her extreme. Like, it might be more fitting. Like Katerina sort of knows she's going to die. And weirdly enough, the actress knew she was going to die because she just filmed her death scene. She filmed her death scene before she entered the show.
Yeah, again, it's sort of getting back to the chaos of this era where they wrote out Vicki. So it's like, okay, we need someone else. And then they were like, oh no, but we're going to do this super dramatic thing. And they probably also sort of concluded having someone from ancient Greece might not be a particularly useful companion going forward. So,
and that's sort of the legend. Speaking of myths, there's a lot of myths and like layers of myths that we're talking about here, which is so delicious to dive into. And one of them is this. That has sort of been the myth that's built up around Katerina over the years, that they just sort of realized, oh, you're going to have to explain everything to her, because she's from the far past. So literally, like, a pencil, she's not going to understand a pencil. Writing, she's not going to understand writing because they didn't actually write, and it was an illiterate age that is always being described by Homer. So it's not going to keep them on for long. But I don't think that's right. I don't think that matches up with the timeline. Doesn't match up with the fact that she was killed before she had her first scene. Like they knew what was going to happen to her.
And I know maybe they didn't necessarily take people from too far back after this, but it also kind of doesn't match up with, say, Jamie.
Yeah.
And others who are from the past who, yes, they need stuff explained to them. But I think if you look at how Jamie would just handle it and just, with some probably a better written character, but he'd, turn on the Scottish charm, just, hi, that, like. Right.
Yeah. Hey. Sorry. That's about half of all Scottish talk.
Yeah. So like companions from the past can work. I think you just kind of have to know what you're sort of getting into and what their strengths are. And maybe they just never thought that through with Katerina because, they didn't see the need. But I 100% would agree. Like, if you're going to write Vicki out anyway, and you need a big dramatic death in the next episode, I mean, how come no one put 2 and 2 together?
Yeah, you're right to say that it's all part of the chaos of the time. A lot of that chaos was affecting Hartnell as well. Like, he had a terrible time of the Mythmakers. He got hit by a camera.
Yeah,
got a massive bruise from it. He was still pissed off that Verity Lambert had gone. Yeah. He had a good relationship with her. Didn't like the new guy. Had a fight in a pub.
Like a fight?
A fight. He got a black eye.
Oh, wow.
Hartnell got a black eye, and they had to do makeup over it.
Not one to avoid the fisticuffs.
Yes. Doctor. And the poor guy, he lost his aunt, who Hartnell had kind of a rough childhood, and she was kind of a surrogate mother to him. And she died.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah. And he couldn't go to the funeral because of because of the Mythmakers.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, talk about a Greek tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
poor
a tough time for him. Enough time for the show.
Yeah, and you definitely hear that in his performance. Like this is definitely one of those Hartnell stories where you're like, you can do it, my lad. You can wrestle that line to the ground. You can get through it. Supposedly that he made some fluff about the ham bone, and the director kind of changed, pointed it out rather too much by kind of changing the line on him to make it more Hartnell-esque. Which, oh no, don't do that.
Well, I also heard he was a little fearful of some of the actors they got on this that were kind of upstaging him, because they got some apparently some top-notch actors at the time.
They did,
so,
but supposedly he was most worried about the guy playing Priam, but Max Adrian, but he wasn't in any scenes with him. So, they did manage to keep those two apart. But yeah, I think Hartnell was just like the definition of irascible.
And I think some of the earlier scenes didn't get played maybe with the same amount of humor as I think that what they're going for here is sort of the Trojan War as comedy, and as a bit of a not quite a fun romp, but like as you get through, you have that moment again and again. It's like, okay, I get where you're going with this. And
I mean, it kind of is a fun romp. When you go through it a second, like there's a lot of very subtle jokes that it's hard to catch on a first read, and there are many jokes you're not going to get unless you are familiar with the source material.
I feel like I'm about to feel very dumb. So why don't we go full on and enter the history corner?
Oh yeah, that's right. We have a jingle for the history corner now. Thanks, Martin.
I didn't brand it. I should have said "Pull to Open History Corner."
Yes, the Pull to Open History Corner.
Podcast they're listening to.
So there's no need to feel dumb, because I feel dumb. How much I've gone through my life and I haven't read the Iliad, and I didn't understand even what the Iliad was in terms of what it covers. I thought that like the Odyssey covers the entire trip of Odysseus after going home after the siege of Troy, right? We know that. That's sort of more famous. The Iliad, I'd always assumed that it covered the whole war, like that it starts off with. Yeah, that's what I thought, because like that's the story we all know, right? We know about Paris, the judgment of Paris, and Paris stealing Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships. 1,000 ships come besiege Troy for 10 years. There's a horse. That's how they do it.
Instead, is it like Odysseus in the dark in a horse, and it's like it's cramped with a bunch of soldiers, and it's like record scratch? You're probably wondering how I got into this place.
That is brilliant, and that may well have been the first draft. But no. So the Iliad and Homer, by the way, despite the fact that Donald Cotton wrote the novelization in the voice of Homer, we still don't know who Homer is. If they were one person, we've got no idea whatsoever. What we do know is that there was a vast cycle of legends that had built up around Troy, around the war in Troy, became just everyone was familiar with, right? And we've only got a few little pieces of these legends now, of these cycles. The Iliad and the Odyssey are part of them. They're just part of the whole. And all of that stuff. And the Doctor is wrong when he says Homer is the source for the horse. The source for the horse. Which is but first of all, I gotta say, I love that idea. The Doctor, basically, it feels like a New Who episode. The Doctor's like, no, I'm not going to tell them about the horse because it was made up. It sounds really stupid. I'm not going to do it. And then he has to do it. He tries to give them flying machines instead. It doesn't work. And I just love that. I love that. No, it's stupid. Like, that feels like a very, very New Who thing. But also, like, the horse isn't in the Iliad. The Iliad just covers really a very short space of time. It's really just about Hector and Achilles. Okay. And their various, all leading up to the showdown that is in the Iliad. Like, it's the highest point of drama. Like, they really build up to it. And Achilles is furious because Hector has killed his friend, and we're going to put friend in quotes. If you can see on YouTube, I'm doing friend, because Patroclus is the guy who's killed, who Hector mentions at the start. Hector kills Patroclus. Patroclus was Achilles' friend.
The whole Iliad is leading up to this climax, which
Yes.
the Mythmakers begins with.
Yes!
Wow, okay.
So what Donald Cotton is doing and what Doctor Who is doing here is subverting the entire Iliad by coming in. The TARDIS comes in at the most dramatic moment. Like, the whole thing has been leading up to this titanic struggle between Hector and Achilles, which, by the way, was in front of all of their troops. Like, that's how this happened. They're not there, of course, in the top two versions. It's just the two of them, just sort of trading barbs with each other. And it's quite
Homer's
snarky.
there.
Homer is there according to the novelization.
Behind a sand dune or something.
Yes, at one point he's hiding behind a cactus, and I'm like, ooh, Megalos connection. So it's really defanging the entire Iliad, the whole point of the Iliad, for the Doctor to just come in, and he says this wonderful thing, which you might almost assume to be a sort of a weird mistake, where he's like, oh, don't, Hector is down on the ground, and he says, Zeus! As the Doctor emerges, and he's distracted, Achilles stabs him. Yeah. And the Doctor says, stop, you must not kick a man when he's down. Oh, you've killed this poor fellow. And it's just like, oh my god, this huge, the most tragic moment in the Iliad. Okay, so the Iliad doesn't exactly end there, because I don't know if you know what Hector did, or what Achilles did afterwards with the body of Hector. Like, the whole Iliad has been priming you for, like, the most important thing that you must do is, like, you honor the heroes. Like, if you fall in battle, you got to have, like, funeral rites. You've got to be returned to your family. Like, this is how we do it. This is how we do war. These are the rules of war. Like, you act honorably. And Achilles doesn't do this. He slaughters Trojan. He fills up a river so much with so many Trojan corpses that the river starts to complain, because that's what rivers did in ancient Greek myths. Like, hey, stop filling me with corpses. He drags Hector's corpse around Troy for days on the back of a chariot so his parents can see. I mean, this is. And it shocks that even the gods on Olympus are shocked by his behavior.
There's no war crime trial on Olympus or something. That doesn't happen, I guess.
So, like, that's the level of tragedy and, like, heightened drama that we're talking about. And Doctor Who just comes in the middle of that, like, nope, we're just going to take all of that out. The Doctor is just going to be, oh, hey, you killed him. And then, like, Achilles goes back and he's like, oh, yeah, Hector's dead. Oh, and I found Zeus.
Then does the horse thing in the Odyssey then? Yeah.
The horse thing is mentioned in the Odyssey. Our main source...
Big thing, isn't it?
So it's from the original epic cycle. This original story is lost. What we have it from, mostly, is the Aeneid. Which was written in Roman times by Virgil, the poet Virgil, but who was working off, documents we no longer have, stories we no longer have. Like, everyone knew the story. And by the way, everyone knew the story during a long period between the Bronze Age and the Iron Age when we didn't have writing. Right, so that's the oral tradition. It was passed on. And it was kind of passed on as a game of telephone, which is why the latest thinking on what the Trojan horse is that it wasn't a horse at all. It was a ship.
Oh, okay. Well, wait a minute. So they had a ship that was on the desert? So, first of all, here's how it goes down in the myth. The Trojan, like, you think about the Greek myth and you're like, Trojans are freaking idiots. Why did they just wheel this thing into their city? Well, it was a gift. And of course, you have that famous phrase, beware of Greeks bearing gifts, which is actually from the Aeneid. Literally says that a priest is like, oh no, don't do it. And Cassandra's in the background going, no, this is doom. And they're like, oh, shut up, Cassandra. And no, don't bring this on. Smurf, just throw it out of the village.
So no, they went the extra hog, and it's almost like they had a writer's room on it, because here's what you need. You need a Greek guy who's known to hate Odysseus and have a lot of battles with Odysseus, and he volunteers to stay behind and say they defiled Hector, and the goddess is very angry, and they stole this thing. They actually in the Iliad they steal a I think it's called the Palladium from Troy, and it's a monument to Athena, and Troy can't win if they don't have the Palladiums. That's why they sneak in and steal it. Helen helps them. It's a whole thing. And then they're like, so the story is, we realize that we angered the gods by stealing that thing. Athena has said we can never win now, and we'll never win again unless we leave you this gift. And also they have this guy who Odysseus hates. He hates Odysseus. He volunteers to be beaten up and say, they tried to use me as a human sacrifice. But the gods said they got to build this horse. But you know what? You are never going to get it into Troy. And that's why Odysseus was cunning, because he built it so it was taller than your city gates. And the people of Troy are like, that's no problem. We'll just take the gates off and we'll bring the horse in. How do you like that, Greeks? So they think they're getting one over on Odysseus. They think they're doing the right thing by the gods. They think that the Greeks are acting, that they've finally come to their senses. And they've stopped, doing all that bad shit that Achilles was doing with Hector's body and, all defiling it. This makes sense. This is an apology. This is an apology horse. Okay, so that's what happens. In history, the idea... So we have lots of examples of boats being called sea horses.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of that. They were just... And a lot of military equipment was described with animal names. Right, so the idea thinking now is that yes, he may have just left a boat, maybe on the plane outside or something, or and here's our gift, here's our offering.
Here, have a boat.
Yeah, here, have a boat. And they fell for it. So it might be that. It would make more sense because Odysseus, of course, he was kind of a sailor, known as a sailor. It would make more sense for him to think of a boat than to think of a horse. So it may have just been a game of telephone.
You would suspect people are on the boat more, and that might be more obvious than having people in a hollow horse. I guess that's where you kind of then the whole subterfuge kind of works a little better with the horse.
It does, and I think that's probably why legions of storytellers over the centuries before Homer were like, this is actually a seahorse. You say no, let's actually make it a horse. That makes it a better story, right? If you got the story, you've got the legend, print the legend.
If it's like the Millennium Falcon, and you have the floorboards that come up, then maybe the boat works.
But there is, my goodness, there's so much more to the story. Like Helen comes out and turns out to be an expert at mimicking voices. So she goes up to the horse and she's like, she mimics the voices of all of the wives of the Trojans who are inside. Of the Greeks who are inside. She mimics the voice of Penelope, and Odysseus' wife, and he has to because they all miss their wives so much. And Odysseus actually has to strangle one of the other Greeks in the horse. He kills him because he's going to cry out because it sounds so much like his wife.
Huh. But it sounds like in the story they already suspect something's in the horse. Why didn't they just check?
Well, it's Helen actually gets word from Aphrodite, I believe.
I see.
Because they're in cahoots.
She hasn't told anyone. She's just sort of pissed.
Well, she tells her new husband, because Paris has died at this point. I don't know if you knew this. Helen had actually 4 husbands.
Where is Helen in the Mythmakers?
Yeah, she's not really in it. And it's kind of subverted because what's so wonderful is you have that scene with Agamemnon, the king of the Greeks, and Menelaus, his brother. At the start, and Menelaus was Helen's husband. He was the one that she was stolen from.
Right.
Launching the whole Trojan War in the first place. So that's why it's hilarious that you've got Menelaus being like, I don't even like Helen really that much. After 10 years later, no, I don't. Oh, they can have him. They can have her. which is subverting it, but it's also kind of like how they feel in the Iliad. Like, Helen is seen to be more trouble than she's worth, and Menelaus is like, oh, I'm just sort of doing this because I kind of have to. Helen actually wants Menelaus back at the end. After Paris reveals himself to be a shallow dude.
There's just like one or two references in the script where like there's the one you mentioned, and then like Paris said, so like, you're not, the whole Helen thing was a misunderstanding, or like it was kind of like, like, and again, this is the strength of the myth makers is its sort of farcical take on all the history and subverting it. I mean, I really liked, like, there's one point where I feel like I think this line would have worked better in New Who, because I think they would have played it up even more, because it almost goes by you, but it's kind of like, I believe it's at the end of episode 3 when they're bringing in the horse, and Cassandra is like, "Woe to the Trojans."
Yes.
"I'm afraid you're a bit late to say woe to the horse." And it's like, holy cow, like,
you went
going for the dad jokes even.
Yep.
Like, this is funny. I mean, it's like, if you had any doubt at that point, you're like, oh yeah, like the comedic vibes are just too strong. And I feel like it's setting you up again for episode 4. Oh, that the next one's going to bring the house down. Like, this is going to be hilarious. And then it kind of isn't. Like, it's not just tragic. And sort of, I guess I'm kind of coming out of the history corner here, but like the strongest scenes in episode 4 are sort of when the Doctor and Odysseus are having their exchanges, I think. And there's a very powerful one where Odysseus sort of shows himself to be like just really immoral, and the Doctor calls him out on it. Like, you want your colleagues to die, and you just want more treasure and status for yourself. You're a bad person. And you have these genuine moments, and he's of regret on his part for helping them and inspiring them to build the horse. And there's even like, at least in the telesnap version I watched, he's kind of looking around at the end at all the dead Trojans in the city, and has sort of like genuine remorse. And I feel like this is a bit that may even, in sort of hindsight, have really defined the Doctor's character and sort of cemented like, how he's going to sort of treat situations like this, how he's going to choose his allies more wisely. And like, I mean, it's just kind of like a character building moment for the Doctor, I feel like.
And it's interesting because
you don't expect it all in the 3 episodes leading up to it.
You don't. You might have been primed to expect it by Galaxy 4. I believe the Doctor doesn't quite win the day there.
Right.
And it's certainly, the whole of season 3 seems to be kind of playing with this notion that the Doctor always wins. You have Galaxy 4, and then you have Mission to the Unknown. Doctor isn't even in that episode. And Dalek's master plan, you sort of expect him to win throughout, and that keeps getting subverted. And in fact, his companions keep dying, not only Katarina, but of course, Sarah Kingdom. So the Doctor doesn't win. So it's this really dark thing. They're constantly playing with your expectations. Of course, the Doctor's the hero. He's going to win. And you're absolutely right. He realizes here that the capricious gods have a role for the Doctor here, and it is to invent the myth of the horse. Even though he doesn't want to, even though he sees it clear as Cassandra, what's going to happen.
Right. And he's doing
it
to, out of self-preservation, which is totally understandable. But it's also like when you balance what happens and the lives that are lost sort of because of it. I mean, I guess, again, you could always argue that they were like, this is again the warlords argument of they were going to die anyway. But I think everything about Doctor Who is like, that's not a good excuse, right? Like, all the way up to the Doctor Falls, where he sort of states his philosophy out loud. And I feel like some of the first forming of that philosophy is here. It's kind of what's surprisingly powerful stuff in the myth makers.
It really is. I mean, and you are absolutely right that Donald Conlon totally subverts your expectations. You're really expecting him somehow like make everything all right in the 4th episode.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. And it is, I mean, the Greek sacking of Troy is sort of infamous in history of being one of the most degraded just horrible massacres. It was like the My Lai of its day. I mean, it was just wrong on so many levels. Not just the killing, not just the killing of old man Priam, and all of the male line, but the enslaving and the raping of all of the women of Troy. I mean, it was nasty, nasty stuff. And to its credit, like I think it would have been diminished if Doctor Who had sort of tried to make light of all of that. And it is sort of, the whole thing is barbaric that this is a missing story. But it's especially sad that it's missing because of that fourth episode, because so much of it is like you hear on the telestamp version, so much of it, or on the audio version, so much of it is taken up by screams and slaughter, and it's going on in the background constantly. Yeah. And I really want to know like how they filmed that. Did you get a sense of sort of scale of the dead Trojans? You mentioned there are scenes with dead Trojans.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's funny. Like episode 4 has a few clips that are clearly not even from Doctor Who. It looks like there's a bit where people are sort of coming down from the rope from the horse, and it looks clearly taken from another show like Robin Hood or something. One of them even has a bow, I think. Which actually made me think, like, wait a minute, did the Doctor must have come down that rope? And it's like, is that walking stick that he has, is that just for show? We've seen him engage in fisticuffs. So
in the Romans,
and it also made me think about how did he get in? Like, I guess he climbed up a rope. Like this Doctor's a little more spry than you might think.
So here's a connection with a random connection with the Ambassadors of Death. It's been very hard to connect the two, and we'll get into more when we get to why did the randomizer bring us here. But there was supposed to be a Morse code scene where the Doctor and Stephen communicate. Well, first of all, I will say, speaking of dad jokes, the original title of episode 3 would have been one of my favorite titles in Doctor Who history had Donald Cotton been allowed to put in the title that he wanted, which was, "Is there a doctor in the horse?"
Right.
Which is so good. Yeah. So good. I love that. It was also supposed to be, the title of episode 1 was either Deus Ex Machina or Zeus Ex Machina.
Right.
Zeus Ex Machina, which is just, and he uses that in the book, and it's brilliant. So, clearly going for the comedy here, the dark comedy, as it turns out. But yeah, so there was supposed to be Morse code communication between the two.
Oh, yeah.
Between Stephen and the Doctor. But also then there's the other irony of the fact that Diomedes, the Greek character that Stephen is supposed to be, was actually supposed to be in the horse. It was actually one of, so he and the Doctor switched places.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, maybe that got screwed up. I wonder if that's explained away. Like he's in the city toward the end, so maybe history just chalked it up to like he must have been in the horse when he wasn't really.
Yeah, but the Doctor has blood on his hands here. He really does. Blood on his hands. And he tries. He's so desperate that he tries to give the Greeks the secret of flight.
Right, and then sort of says it's not going to work. And I guess we have to take him at his word that the calculations wouldn't work because they probably just doesn't have the right material to build a glider or whatever. But he almost seems like he knew it wasn't going to work, but he didn't realize he was going to be called upon to test it. So he kind of ditches it at that point.
He thinks that making a paper aeroplane is going to wow Odysseus.
Yeah,
I love that scene. He's like, "Oh, look, here's a paper airplane." And he's like, "Are you simple? My kids do this." It's like just everyone knows paper airplanes. Yeah. Like, and I like this. The idea that the Doctor is still young in his first regeneration, and he doesn't know how to pull the wool over the eyes of someone as cunning as Odysseus.
That was kind of one of the things I was found surprising in the first episode with both the Doctor and Vicki, just like be completely like, okay, I'm not Zeus, and I'm just a traveler and a time traveler, and blah blah blah. And then same with Vicki, she's just like, I'm not going to pretend I'm something I'm not. I'm a time traveler, and she's completely honest with everyone. And I was like, I don't know if I like that, to be honest with you, because it does subvert your expectation because you feel like the standard thing to do is, okay, I'm going to lean into whatever their assumption is so that I can get stuff from them or simply buy time to go. And they both don't. They both kind of like, okay, well, we're not that, but we're this. And we can still work with that. And I think in Vicky's case, she sort of wins them over, right? I sort of mentioned that in the summary. And like, particularly Paris and Troilus, and, obviously Cassandra wants everyone dead, but, and Priam. And
she wins over Priam, who then insults her looks.
Right.
By basically saying, it's not, exactly, don't, you've not met Helen, never mind. If only he'd met a nice, sensible girl like you, he says of Paris. I always say it's character that counts, not good looks, which is just that Priam has not been well socialized these last 10 years in Troy. He doesn't really know how to talk to a woman like Vicki.
Why would you, with all the orgies all over the place? And
indeed.
And we talk about that line, which
yes,
I don't know if we want to say too much about it, but I guess it's Odysseus to the doctor when they're in the horse, and he says, "You're making me as nervous as a bacchanal at her first orgy."
Right.
And when I I was just like, what did he say? And I just could picture all the British school children asking their parents, "What's an orgy?" after that line was, broadcast on the Mythmakers. It's like, whoa, that's a wildly accurate but interesting choice to leave in.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments like that. That's probably the best example where you're just like, how did this make it past? How did this make it onto tea time television? And it's because it's the classics. So everything is forgiven. It's just, it's like Shakespeare. Oh, it's in Shakespeare. It doesn't matter that it's bawdy and he's really talking about 4-letter words. It's the orgy scene is one of those. I think it also at the time was kind of like, you heard orgy, you thought Roman orgy, right? It doesn't necessarily have the connotations that it has today, being purely sexual. You just thought it was a big party. Bacchanate, by the way, that is anachronistic. They've got Odysseus saying it. But let's talk about that a little bit. Like, I think there's a deliberate attempt to say that, look, this is that we're in the realm of myth here. We're never going to find out if these people are real. We're barely even sure that we know where Troy is, or which Troy it was, because rather famously, a German archaeologist in the 19th century discovered 9 Troys, all layered on top of each other. The one that Homer was writing about is probably Troy 6 or 7. Which I just like. That's kind of timey-wimey, isn't it? It's a bit sort of all of this has happened before, all of this is going to happen again.
Troy 6, the undiscovered country.
So it's really playing with this. The whole show is playing with this question, like Doctor Who never really has again, of like, what is myth and what is history? And what are we in here? And it's sort of weird. And are we the myth makers? Like that's made more explicit in the novel. Where Stephen actually says in the novel, like these heroes are the myth makers because they're not all they're cracked up to be. Like that Hector and that Achilles, like they're going to be built up to be big heroes, but no, actually, look, here are the human beings that they're based on. They're not the myths. But the Doctor himself is a myth maker,
that's
right?
the thing, like the multiple meanings certainly, but that was always my take from it, that the Doctor and his companions coming in, they end up being the myth makers.
Yes.
Particularly the Doctor, obviously, because he just pulls out the horse, which, by the way, is a bootstrap paradox, is it not? Like,
yes,
no one ever actually comes up with the idea. The Doctor only knows because he borrows it from Homer, and obviously Homer only writes it down because he sees the Doctor doing it. And
in the novelization, yes,
there you go.
Yes, if you believe that if you believe that Homer is there, but it's the bootstrap paradox, which would only be explored fully and explained fully with that great line, Google it, in Under the Lake Before the Flood in the Capaldi era. But here it is. Here's the bootstrap paradox in all its glory. And I think the Doctor sort of realizes this. And it's interesting that we've been to the Time Meddler recently. He will meet the Time Meddler again in the next story. Yep. And I kind of wish they'd inserted a line about the Time Meddler being like, oh, so you weren't meddling, eh, Doctor? Well, let's talk about a certain Greek horse, shall we?
I heard about what you were up to in Troy. I'm an amateur compared to you.
But yeah, this is meddling. I mean, they even use the word meddling in the novelization just to make it clear. Like he's forced to become everything that he has detested. And this is proof you can't time travel without getting involved.
Well, one more thing I want to say about the Mythmakers is I think it's a good episode for companions. I think even though it's Maureen O'Brien's last story, I mean, she does not phone it in. And both Vicki and Stephen are given a great deal of agency in this. And Stephen gets to show an incredible amount of bravery if you think about it. I mean, again, he's a character in a story, so, not to read too much into it, but like he basically says, I'm going to take high personal risk here. Maybe I might get killed by Paris. I might get killed just by being captured and almost certainly going to be tortured just to get to the city and make sure Vicky's okay and figure out some way to bust him out. So you almost think like, why isn't Vicki falling for him?
Which of course she did. She would have done in the original outline. Yeah.
Which I think part of it might have been what they mention with Troilus' age. So he's 17, and he mentions, well, I'm almost that old, which suggests she's 16 or sort of younger than suggests she's 16, and which maybe tracks a bit with the rescue. Although Maureen O'Brien was about 22, I think, when this was filmed, so not unusual for 20-year-olds and whatever to play high school students and stuff. So that's like whatever. But maybe they were just trying to sort of get away from the age thing or avoid it.
Or ignore that fact. But I mean, it is accurate that Paris and Helen were really young, and all of the heroes are really, really very young. They're kind of the equivalent of athletes.
In the past.
Yeah. Well, some of them did, like King Priam. One of the weird facts I picked up in the last week, Priam literally means I am owned, because he had to be bought back from slavers in his youth. It's really fascinating.
Oh, I wonder if that's where pwned comes from.
I love it.
By the way,
I'm going to give you listeners, if you are as clueless as I was last week about all of this, because I will just say, like I didn't know any of this before I dove into this rabbit hole. The best way to get the Greek myths into my head, I discovered, or the Greek version of the Troy story, Stephen Fry. The lovely, glorious Stephen Fry did a book called Troy. It was the third in his cycle of books. He did Mythos, and then Heroes, and then Troy. And Troy retells the story, the whole story, not just the Iliad. And it's beautifully written. Obviously, I listened to the audio book because his voice is so perfect in narration. There's a reason why he did all the Harry Potter books. It's just wonderful, and his writing is perfect. He really makes it make sense a lot more. So I recommend that. I do not recommend watching the 3-hour movie of Troy with Brad Pitt as Achilles. That was a mistake. So,
so you don't recommend based on your experience.
Brad Pitt himself did not like that movie, and I could see why.
Did that do that at your research, or had you seen it before?
I'd not seen it before. No, this was part of the research.
All right.
And then I get to like
recommendation.
I get to like the first 5 minutes, and I'm like, wow, it's Brian Cox playing Agamemnon. Basically like he played Logan Roy in Succession. So I'm like, oh, I'm on board with this. And then 5 minutes later, naked Brad Pitt, with two women on top of him, and you're like, really? Yeah, and he just sort of looks blonde and weird, and I don't know.
Right. Well, the question of Troy being a good recommendation has been answered, but there are other questions we must answer, and those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question: why did the randomizer take us here?
Well, I've mentioned a lot of this already, but let's just go through it. So I think, first of all, the direct connection to the Ambassadors of Death is that, there's the Morse code thing, which was in the Ambassadors of Death, was supposed to be in the Mythmakers. Right. But I think more directly, I think the randomizer is Zeus. The randomizer is playing with us. The randomizer is a capricious god, and one of the things this capricious god says is, "Oh, you wanted a break after the 7 episodes of this really difficult story called The Ambassadors of Death, where it's really hard to break down the conspiracy and figure out what the actual story is. You want a breather? Oh no, you are going to get the Mythmakers. You're going to get one of the most, I wouldn't say adult themed, but like certainly."
Interesting. One of the most interesting episodes of the Hartnell era, I would say.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lost classic, I think. A lot of people at the time, I mentioned this briefly, a lot of people at the time, the audience research reports were like, I don't understand. What's this got to do with Missions to the Unknown? Like, we saw the Daleks were taking over the universe. Now there's Hector and Achilles. What's going on? So it was kind of disparaged at the time. And of course, people aren't really aware of it because it's missing now. But it really is. It's vaulted straight to the top of the list of missing stories where I would like to see the actual episodes rediscovered.
Yeah, I mean, again, not to toot our own horn on this, but like I think our structure of just sort of randomly popping around Doctor Who gives us advantage in sort of having cold takes, and kind of like what we said about Flatline a while back, we taking it out of the context of Series 8 that time, like made that shine even brighter because you didn't have all the like what's going on with Clara and do we like her, do we not, without the whole Impossible Girl thing. And now, like for this one again, like removing it from like, well, what's going on with the Daleks, and it's we're kind of going into this other darker direction. What's it? You know, it's just confused, and you can put all that aside and just really appreciate the story. So, yeah it's that kind of thing.
But also the randomizers, like I feel like it's deliberately flying us past the massive Jupiter of Dalek's master plan, like right through the gap that we have created between, or that did exist in the original order.
It's more like Achilles circling Troy with Hector.
Yes,
Hector's body behind him. The randomizer is just look right there, guys. We could give you a Dalek's master plan anytime I want. Be kind.
And
so
I'm actually glad it did that. It's like I feel primed for the Daleks master plan now. I mean, watch the randomizer take it to us, take us there next for our 100th story. Wouldn't that be a randomizer thing to do?
So I'm
but if so, I'm ready.
That could be the randomizer connection right there. It's just it's making us aware the Daleks master plan is still there. But
let's do it and be Greek heroes.
I like to zero in on the whole relationship between the Doctor and Odysseus, which was one of the more interesting ones here, and in particular comes to a head in the 4th episode. And I think if you contrast the Doctor and Odysseus and sort of being a reluctant ally or helper of him with his relationship with the Brigadier later, which is obviously a different person, different relationship, but you think about the Pertwee Doctor being older, wiser, and sort of picking his allies more carefully. And I think, honestly, like I feel a little better about him almost ditching the Brigadier in Spearhead from Space after this, because it's like, I get it. I understand now more from the Mythmakers, like why you're going to be distrustful of the military or people who might want something from you. And I'm not saying that like it's certainly not the same. Like the Brigadier, I think Pertwee, as he comes to know the Brigadier, realizes he's motivated more by patriotism and duty, and not the immoral motivations of Odysseus here. So it's the contrast is what I'm getting at, and it's good to see sort of like that again. I think this is very formative for the Doctor. It's that suspicion of those sort of people in authority, and watch out for their morality, because you might end up doing something you really, really regret.
That's a very interesting thought. I am glad that the randomizer didn't give us Dalek's master plan, because of course that would have been the connection would have been the Brigadier, because that is Nicholas Courtney's first story.
Oh yeah,
although he's not playing the Brigadier in it. But yeah, I kind of if this were New Who, and it does feel very New Who-ish, but it feels like you just sort of maybe add a scene at the end as kind of a knowing, winking scene. The Doctor says to Odysseus, "What are you going to do now?" And Odysseus just says, "I'm going home the long way around."
Okay. Well, we're going to have to go to the next question the short way around. And that is, of course, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Yeah, and this one's an easy answer, because it did.
Yeah. It depends on what you pick the evil plot. But if the evil plot is to lay waste to Troy and sack the city,
Yep.
that's done.
Done. Job done.
I suppose you could argue Cassandra has an evil plot to burn the TARDIS, kill Vicki and Steven, be mistrustful of any gifts and destroy them, or certainly not bring them into the city. And if her evil plot succeeds, Troy stands. Although our heroes, most of them die. Well, certainly the Doctor would die too, because he wouldn't succeed in helping them.
You definitely you got to wonder this plot of burning the TARDIS, which is in fact a cliffhanger. Is there any way that could succeed? You can't burn a TARDIS.
Not according to Pertwee, at least later. I think at this point the TARDIS's indestructibility hadn't been fully established. Now it did fall off a cliff in the Romans, as we saw.
Yes.
So it's pretty hardy, like it's pretty durable. But I think the burning, I mean, if you remember the Sensorites, right? Like they used some heat to get rid of the lock, and that was a while. That was a couple of seasons ago, but still.
If only Cassandra had known, I'd just put a very small flyer around the lock, and you could just pop it out.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. It's.
I think we have to assume, from a retcon kind of way, the burning wouldn't work, and then would they then be convinced that this is from the gods? I guess
so. I mean, it's interesting. It might be even more tragic if they believe her on the TARDIS and then don't believe her on the horse. That would seem to be Cassandra's ultimate tragedy there. It's. I mean, you could almost say that the evil plot is the Doctor's in terms of trying to get them away from this horse notion. I mean, what if he actually had accidentally given them the secret of flight, and invents hang gliders for them, or something?
Catapult-driven hang gliders.
Yeah.
I feel like that can't end well, though. I guess it depends on your landing abilities as a glider, but
well, what you might have then is Agamemnon becoming the equivalent of Alexander the Great. By the way, Alexander the Great, one of the best facts I learned this week is that Alexander the Great slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow that was annotated by Aristotle. Wow. I mean, whoa!
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
So he was for that on eBay.
Yeah, I know, right? It was in this special box, so he always slept with a dagger under his pillow and a copy of the Iliad. He basically used the Iliad as his template for world conquest. And that's how he did it. So Agamemnon, if he'd had the power of flight, he was clearly ambitious. Clearly wanted to unite all of Greece and Troy and Persia and the world. I don't think he would have stopped at Troy. I think he would have become an Alexander, and maybe the whole of world history would be different.
Maybe
gone on conquering everywhere.
I guess it wouldn't work because all they would have to work with was wood, and wood is probably, as I assume, it's just probably too heavy, as opposed to sort of the alloys and plastics that we have today for
maybe
and things like that.
But maybe somewhere in the bowels of the TARDIS, the Doctor has some actual light planes that you can just sort of drag out. He's got a hanger in there somewhere.
Well, if that happens, the myth isn't made, but a different myth is made. So,
indeed.
There we go.
Yes, the myth of mighty Agamemnon and how he invented flight and took over the world with it.
History would be quite different, but it's been different a couple of times, and I think there was a point where they had to do something different I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just trying to ask, guys, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald, of course, splintered in time at the end of The Name of the Doctor. She is somewhere in every single Doctor Who story. What is she doing in The Mythmakers?
Well, I think that she is. She's got to be another handmaid of Cassandra.
Yeah.
Because first of all, we don't see Cassandra's handmaids until the last episode, apparently, and Katerina just comes out like, as if she's been shoved on stage, perhaps by a fellow handmaiden, perhaps by Clara, the handmaiden. But also, I feel like the one thing for this story to go as it's supposed to go is you really got to make sure that people don't believe Cassandra. So I think that Clara's not only Cassandra's handmaid, she's also her voice coach. She's like, what you got to do to convince King Priam is like just really go for the screechy voice.
Yeah,
like just hector him, to coin a phrase, with your predictions.
Just dig in.
Yes,
just completely be inflexible about your position and just repeat it at a louder voice. He will completely cave at some point. Maybe not today, but eventually he will.
Just keep going for 10 years. You'll get him eventually. He'll figure it out. Or maybe she's the one who's like whispering in the ear of Paris when he says, "Oh, I've just given. It's too late to say woe to the horse." Just bring it in. Maybe she's the one who's like, if you make this joke, it's going to be really, really funny.
Oh, wow. Well, she was probably advising the Republican candidates in their debate earlier this week, too. So I thought that, Troilus, he's 17. He's a man about town there in Troy. I got to think, with his connections, that he's got a lot of girlfriends, or at least I got a lot of girls wanting to be his girlfriend. And I think perhaps Clara is keeping them away somehow. Maybe she is some kind of notorious gossip. Maybe I don't think she's bad-mouthing him in particular, but she's, for whatever reason, making sure they are, keeping away, keep this guy single. And got to make sure he's available, and then maybe she's promising we'll all get in line when he's 18. Or something.
Maybe if Vicki is not seen as a great beauty, which is what Priam is suggesting, that and certainly you got to figure if they've got the world's most beautiful woman, Helen, living in the city of Troy, you kind of have to up your game to be regarded as a 10. Sorry, Maureen O'Brien. But maybe that's, I think you're right. She's Clara is a girlfriend for Troilus, but maybe she's the one who emphasizes the lesson of like, look, you don't go for beauty because you get someone like me who's going to break your heart. And, and Troilus is like, what I need is a nice, homely girl like that Cressida. Well, my dad seems to think that, she's all cool and I shouldn't go for looks. And, again, sorry, Maureen O'Brien. You're great. You're a 10 with us. You're a 10 with
always
us, but
10.
at Troy.
Always a 10. So she's either doing kind of Gossip Girl or The Bachelor without the Bachelor. You know what I mean? Like she's getting all the girls in Troy to kind of like fight it out, but Troilus is totally oblivious to it. Or she's like a girlfriend that is more like a friend with benefits, so she never really fully commits.
She could also be the one to distract Achilles. I mean, you got to wonder, given all the information we have on how freaking mad Achilles is at this point in the story, he's just furious because he loved Patroclus so much that he just wants to avenge it. And Patroclus went out dressed as him, so like there's all this guilt involved instead. It was supposed to be Achilles, but he was in one of his phases of like, no, I don't want to. So Patroclus went out and fought for him. That's how he died. So he's feeling really guilty. So I feel like maybe you need some explanation for why is Achilles like surprisingly calm throughout the whole of the Mythmakers? Well, maybe he's met Clara, and maybe she's also the one who distracts him, so that Paris doesn't shoot him with an arrow, which is what happens in the original myth.
All right.
So maybe she's
a surprisingly calming influence.
Yeah. So maybe she's just all over the place, just like whispering in the Greek hero's ears and making sure that it ends. By the way, I'm not sure if so when Vicki goes off with Troilus at the end, and Aeneas, who was briefly mentioned, that they're like, oh, we're going to go found another Troy. That's a reference to Rome. right? So there's a whole story of the Aeneid is that refugees from Troy go off and found Rome, which is just wonderful, given that Vicky's first trip in the TARDIS was to Rome and the Romans, right? So she's kind of looping back on herself in a very interesting, timey-wimey way.
Wow. They didn't show the scene where she comes on her own grave.
That would be interesting. Like in the Roman, it's like she comes across a temple to Cressida, and it's like, wow, Cressida looked a lot like me. That's interesting. Do I really look like that?
Okay, folks, it is time to move on to the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that matters for the myth makers. What did we think of this story? The Pull to Open rating system, of course, has 6 ratings. There's the Dalek, which we give to a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, which we give to a not-so-good episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which is not a great episode, but hey, at least they tried something. The Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. The Fixed Point in Time, which is a show beyond rating. And The Lady Cassandra, which is a paper-thin plot, but it looks pretty good. What do we got here, Chris?
I'm very surprised with how much I like this and how much I kept thinking about it. And I don't think it was just that I knew for the podcast I would have to do the mother of all history corners, combined with the History is Myth corner, the Myth is History corner, a whole room of history and myth and how they interrelate. Like I knew that I was going to have to do that, but I didn't think it was going to be such fun to do that. And it's really because the Mythmakers did it. It sucked me into this area of Greek legends that I had been avoiding. I think of myself as something of a reader, but I kind of been avoiding the Iliad, and like here is the Mythmakers to plunge me straight into the new translation that has just arrived and has, by the way, 100-page introduction that explains the entire Greek myth and background of the Iliad, and it's really, really good. Highly recommend book. Nice. The book, the new version.
What say you? Is it banger or just a book you nerd Dalek?
That is where I am dithering. I am standing outside the temple of Doctor Who, trying to figure out what is my offering here. Shall I bring in the Viscount Banger, or shall I just sort of, bring in the Dalek casing as an offering to this temple? I'm not sure. I part of me wants to say banger, but I think I'm held back by the performances. Now we don't know like what it looked like, as good a job as Loose Cannon has done. We don't really have a sense of what, like how glorious this was as a piece of visual entertainment. But we do have the audio, and we know that everyone is sort of doing their classic Shakespeare voice. Right, which makes it a little inaccessible, makes some of the jokes a little hard to read. You can't quite push through it. Right. So I think I'm going for Banger Dalek Hybrid.
Oh wow! All right, interesting.
That's right.
So before I go, I'm going to just, as we do sometimes, I got the old ratings here from the most recent Doctor Who magazine.
Yes.
So the Mythmakers. This doesn't influence my rating, by the way. I already know what I'm going to give it. It is 15th among the 29 stories, so right about halfway down. And it's risen from its 1998 position of 22nd, and it went as high as 13th for the 2009-2014 polls, and then dropped a couple ranks. That's just, okay, fair enough.
Interesting.
I think... you made me appreciate it even more than I did. I was already going to give it kind of a Dalek, but now I'm considering a banger too, but I can't quite get there just because of that episode 4 and sort of the tragedy of missing out on some of the extra referentialness and cleverness that you mentioned, where if she had just sort of left with Steven and if they'd gone a little bolder with it and maybe even started a relationship at that point and then kill her off a few episodes later in the Dalek's master plan, I think that would have added a lot of weight to a lot of the proceedings here. So big missed opportunity. Also, Katarina's tacked on. I mean, you're just kind of like,
totally.
what just happened? So I originally kind of thought the fourth episode was a little uneven, and I kind of wanted it to go more full farce than getting serious. But and talking out loud about sort of the formative stuff with the Doctor and his morality, even though admittedly some of that's a back read, it's really, really good. I like that it got challenging. And not just challenging about the Doctor's morality, but about, what is his duty as a time traveler. All of that's really, really cool. So yeah, this is definitely one of the more interesting Daleks of the era. And you know what? I'll do it too. I'll do a Dalek Banger hybrid. I
my goodness.
I want it to be, and it's hard to do, with these ones that are lost, but like, I would say of the stuff that we've watched and in terms of, or quote unquote watch, that are lost, this would be near the top of the list with this and Marco Polo.
Oh my goodness. Well, here we stand outside of the pull to open citadel, and someone has left us a giant Dalek casing. We're going to wheel it into our city, and what comes out of the Dalek but a bunch of Viscount bangers? That's right. Lala Ward's father has been cloned, and he's hiding in there, and he comes out, and he goes, surprise! And we're like, oh my god, we thought it was just a Dalek casing. It's fantastic. It's a double banger Dalek hybrid. I don't think that's ever happened before in the history of Pull to Open.
It might be the first time to double hybrid.
Sure. It's
hybrid
perfect. Hybrid. That sounds like such a Greek myth. Like, I mean, there's forever people being hybrids of like gods, mating with humans, and yeah, so a double hybrid sounds perfect for the myth makers. I love it. It seems like we should prophesy that one day this rating shall rule the world, or I don't know. But yes, I feel we have done our service. We have left our sacrifices at the altar of the myth makers.
All right, folks, it is your turn to vote on what you thought about the myth makers. If you are on Spotify, check out the poll feature in your app. You might not be able to give a hybrid rating, but you can answer the poll question and actually put your answer in there. So pick one of our ratings: Dalek, hybrid, Lady Cassandra, perhaps. Surprisingly, you didn't go this time, right?
I know. I did wonder if the randomizer was like trying to draw attention to the Lady Cassandra rating by giving us the only Cassandra story.
How could you ever give a Cassandra to a missing episode? That's sort of the problem, right? This could be a Cassandra. It actually could be, given all the imagery that you kind of see in the telesnaps and the horse. But we'll sadly probably never know. But you can still give it a Cassandra if you have that faith, listener. So go ahead, go to your Spotify app and vote.
And then create a burner account, log in again, and vote for the other thing. And that's how you do a hybrid.
That's how you do a hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah, smart. All right.
Odysseus, got nothing on this brain.
That's right. Okay. The Doctor, the Doctor's always getting around things in creative ways. So can you. Just burner accounts, man. Keep voting. Vote early, vote often.
Rule number one: the Doctor votes twice. Different accounts. All right, it is time for us to step back into our Temple of Zeus and wow you all by disappearing. But first, we have to fire up our randomizer, which has two components. Pete has one of them that's Codex. We've previously mentioned it. The randomizer has now, I hope, I pray, the randomizer has pointed out all of the flaws within the Codex. And we're not going to get another one. But we take the total number of stories that we've yet to do in the Codex, which, Pete, is how many?
That number is 203.
203, which means that this will be our 100th story.
This will be our 100th story that's coming up. Oh,
I know.
This is going to mean some interesting challenges, perhaps.
Well, we're definitely going to be doing an episode in the future where we rate our first 100 stories.
Should we just challenge it to bring us to something with the metric system? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, we do like to issue challenges to the randomizer. Random.org, by the way, which says it isn't pseudo-random like computer algorithms. It really does call upon the gods of the air, of Olympus, and they bring down bouncing atoms, the bouncing atoms of Zeus, the bouncing molecules in the atmosphere. That's what Random.org looks for. We are really, truly in the hands of the gods here. And they are evil and capricious gods, but we do like to do sacrifices in front of the randomizer in the hopes that it will give us a fair outcome. So Pete, what's the sacrifice you brought today?
Well, what I was thinking about, let's just give a story 100, but we've actually already done it. It's the androids of Tara. At least it's not the randomizer number. That's actually a 100th story.
The 100th story, yeah.
But
that's why the doctor went fishing.
100, divide it by 10, come up with 10, and say, hey,
planet? We've done that.
Well, why not give us something from Doctor Number 10? Let's get us some penance.
Ooh, good one. I'm actually going to dovetail with that because I don't think that the randomizer could resist giving us more Cassandra, as in Lady Cassandra, as in let's go to an actual story with Lady Cassandra, and that gives you two options. Randomizer.
Wow.
Gives you New Earth and End of the World.
Playing some serious roulette here.
Pretty specific, but I just don't think you'll be able to resist the Cassandra connection.
It's a good theory.
Almighty randomizer. All right.
Well, we both paired at New Who, so let's see what happens.
All right. I'm offering a silent prayer to Athena before I do this, because I'm not sure who would be the god of the randomizer. Maybe Hermes? Yeah, the trickster god. I feel like the trickster god is in charge of the randomizer, so please, mighty Hermes, messenger of the gods, please be speedy and give us some New Who, please.
If they're going to be speedy, it's Mercury, isn't it?
Mercury is Hermes, yes. In same name. Same god, different names.
Same god? Oh,
yes,
man,
that's right.
No, what about Loki?
Mercury.
God.
Oh, he's different tradition, but similar in terms of being a trickster god. Yeah, okay. Mercury is the Roman version of Hermes.
Oh man!
Just as Jupiter is the Roman version of Zeus.
All right.
So,
well,
yeah.
Now we're out of Legends Corner. Mythology corner? One of the corners. Here we go. It's time for the countdown. Back from 199. No, wait. Let's just go right to 4, 3, 2, 1.
Excellent.
Our 100th story is number 32. It didn't listen to me. It didn't listen to you.
The Seeds of Death.
Oh, wow. We had the Ambassadors of Death. Now we have the Seeds of Death. Do we have an of death bingo?
Maybe.
Maybe we do.
No, we didn't do Robots of Death.
We haven't done Robots
or
of
City
Death.
of Death.
Oh, okay. So we got plenty of death still to come on Pull to Open.
A lot of death, though. We've done Death in Heaven.
Yeah.
We've done the Green Death, so we're pretty death heavy.
We are closing in on Death Bingo, which also sounds like a great Doctor Who title. RTD callers. And we're going to Seeds of Death, which is Second Doctor.
Second Doctor, yeah.
Jamie and Zoe. Set on London and the Moon.
I think I might have even mentioned Scenes of Death just really, really quickly in passing about alien invasions and the future version of history. Remember my theory on Ambassadors of Death?
Yeah.
Talking about the 21st century after that. I mentioned Seeds of Death. So it's picking up.
Did.
The randomizer is always listening.
Well, we certainly discussed the Ice Warriors. Because there was that whole question of Ambassadors of Death. How did they avoid the Ice Warriors when they landed on Mars? So we're going to get to talk about that. There's obviously a big connection between the two there.
So folks, we should probably wrap up this podcast because we got 6 episodes of Doctor Who to watch.
Oh no! The randomizer is a capricious god.
We're not at New Who yet. The last one is still Kerblam, guys. This has been legendary, mythical, Pull to Open. It is a podcast. Please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. There's probably a little follow button in whatever app you're using. Please share it with a friend. Please leave a review. Your app, especially if it's Apple Podcasts, can probably handle a review. You don't have to leave a long one. Just a few words will do, or even a Whomoji title. You can follow us on social media. Pull to Open on TikTok and Blue Sky. Pull to Open 63 on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and I'm forgetting one. But
the other one.
That's it. That other place you can find us.
Facebook. It'll never be big.
We're at youtube.com/pull to open. And yeah, we are excited to come back to Earth and places around it.
Yes, I do love the idea. You just made me think, by the way, another reason for the randomizer to bring us to myth makers. Neil Patrick Harris, legendary. It has been legendary, everyone. And we'll see you next week for the Seeds of Death.
Okay. Woe for us.
Whoa, it's too late to say woe to the Seeds of Death. Bye, guys.
See ya.